just got three things to say. God bless our troops. God bless America. And gentlemen, start your engine!
What's up, y'all? It is episode 8, a special episode of Pistons and Politics here on the 31st of May. Thank you to William Douglas Aldridge,
the PR manager,
our PR manager and tech genius who got us going. There you go. I think that's a little bit better when I'm doing
goodbye for the episode.
Well, maybe. We'll see. He'll probably come back. That's what I'm betting. Anyway, it's good to see y'all. Hey, what's up, Ed Goodman? What's up,
y'all?
Armbrust?
Greetings, programs.
Hey there.
What's up, bots?
It is excellent to see y'all. Oh my God, so much happening in both worlds that we like to talk about. Our motorsports, our Pistons, and our politics.
The entire world, even one might say.
Pulling that back in, absolutely. Yeah, there is quite a lot happening. Huge news today in racing, and a huge weekend of incredibly enjoyable racing. At least I thought so. I personally missed Monaco because I was hanging out in the mountains and swimming in water coming off of large deposits of snow, which was awesome.
That still happens?
It does. Ed, again, we talked about the Stoics a few times on here. I showed my body who is running things and popped myself into some like 48-degree water.
Nice.
Highly recommend it as a great way to start a day. Honestly, I felt like I didn't have to drink an energy drink all day. Have you guys ever done?
Yeah.
You ever started like a cold shower or a cold dip?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Definitely. It gets you started.
Yeah, you're ahead of me because that was my first time, and but I enjoyed it. I went up to Camp Sealy with friends and found a way to watch the Indy 500 while I was up in the mountains. Vince Azua is on with us. We will say hello, Brian.
Hey, Vince. What's up, man?
Ed, Vince is a great friend of ours that we raced with for years there.
Much love, brother.
Out at Cal Speed, and is now in New Mexico. So thanks for joining us, Vince. You don't get in, man. You just write questions or comments and say those things to us, and I'll be sure to put you on there. We'll have you on as a guest sometime, though, soon, Vince.
For sure.
Okay, let's start off, man, with our Pistons bit. And Brian, I want you to start off if you can, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Catch us up to speed on Monaco, which I'm told was actually a very fascinating race, even though if you looked at the timesheet or whatever, it was like, oh, Verstappen just killed everyone. But I don't think that's the whole story. So can you fill us in a little bit?
Yeah, if you just look at the results, you would say, oh, yeah, okay, there's another F1 race. But arguably, potentially the most interesting race of the year so far, which is very out of the norm for Monaco. So for those not familiar, Monaco is done in the city streets of Monaco, of Monte Carlo, and it is very, very tight. Passing is almost impossible. Drivers are within inches of the walls, not even inches. I mean, they're literally touching walls every corner. It's very, very intense, very high adrenaline. Also the oldest track that F1 still, or the most, actually, I might be wrong on that. It might be Silverstone, but it's been in Formula One ever since the very beginning, all the way back into the 50s, 40s. Racing's been taking place there since the 30s. This weekend, was probably the best chance that anybody had to unseat Red Bull if Red Bull made a mistake, because once you get ahead, it's hard to pass. So Fernando Alonso qualified second, and Sergio Perez had an incident in Q1, got knocked out, had to start last. So Jeremy's picks started out poorly for the day. And he had a hard race. Lots of tire changes and some contact, and I think he might have ended up 16th if I remember right, but 2 laps down from just various issues throughout the race. And also because, say again?
I think it was me, man. I think.
Oh, well, that's probably, yeah, you jinxed it for sure. But at the very beginning of the race, he pitted right off the bat and went to the hard tire to try to go all the way to the end. And at first was running 2 seconds a lap faster than anybody else. And but then he caught up to the rest of the pack and couldn't go anywhere, couldn't pass anybody, got stuck.
Yeah.
Fernando stayed within range of Verstappen the whole race. He stayed within a pit delta. So if Verstappen had to go to the pits and Fernando didn't have to pit, he would have been able to overtake. And that's pretty much how it stayed for most of the race. So not super interesting up until about 20 to 15 laps to go. It started to rain. And so everyone had to switch tire. Oh, actually, before that, Max started on the medium tire and Fernando started on the hard, because Fernando wanted to go all the way to the end if possible and then make one stop at the very end, hoping for rain, hoping that he would only have to do one stop. And Max started on the mediums.
Required to change tires, right? I mean, just
You have
for people
to-
that are learning.
Yes. You have to make at least one tire change. You have to use 2 different compounds of tire. So Fernando started on the hards, wanted to go try to make it all the way to the end and take advantage of whenever Max pitted. Max started on the mediums, and the mediums are only supposed to last for 40 laps, according to Pirelli, but Max made them last like 60 or something. Like just laughed in the face of the Pirelli scientists telling him what kind of degradation he's supposed to have, and just continued on. Red Bull is a monster. And Max is a monster in it.
Yeah.
So the rain came, and there was chaos all over the track. There were cars that were going off, bouncing off walls, missing corners, sectors turning yellow all over the place. It was a pandemonium. And Fernando, for some inexplicable reason, his team had him go pit to the medium tire instead of to the intermediate rain tire. So he went and took another slick tire, which is designed for a dry surface. And when he ended up pitting again, like 2 laps later to go on to the wet tire, he was 20 seconds behind Max.
Oh,
And if he had pitted just the once, probably could have had the lead, and probably would have kept it. So
okay, so now I understand your message. So Vince,
Max ended up doing it.
So Vince has a question. How much, and I honestly don't know the answer to it. How much do F1 race cars weigh? Do you know how much they weigh, Brian?
They, if I remember right now, they're something in the range of like 800 kilo, which is quite heavy for a race car, and they've gotten really, really big. If you look at, I saw a picture this weekend of the Formula E cars in the same corner as the Formula One cars, and the Formula One cars are like twice as long. F1 cars are like the size of an SUV now.
Yeah.
Not in height, but in dimension, in length and width, they're about the same size as an Escalade almost. It's crazy.
Yeah. And ironically, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it's not ironic, but Formula E has been putting on, the last 2 races at Monaco have been barn burners, like incredible races and very entertaining. So, progress happens, right? And, it's kind of cool to see that the electric cars now have gotten to the point where they're a lot of fun to watch race, especially at Monaco, these places. So they're getting there.
It's
Well,
really interesting too, because they say that part of the reason why the F1 cars are so heavy is because of the safety regulations and because of the packaging for the hybrid systems and et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, you have these what should be ridiculously heavy electric cars that are almost half the size of them. So there's definitely some formula discussion that could be had there.
Sure. Well, that's pretty cool, and I'm sad that I missed it. But I was in the mountains and in a stream, and I couldn't do that at the same time.
You were waking up. I get it.
But and nothing was open to watch it. But I did actually drag the family, and we actually had a great time to go watch our next race, which is the Indy 500, the granddaddy of them all. This is the largest sporting one-day sporting event in the world. 330,000 plus people all at once in Indianapolis, and I've had the pleasure of being there one time, and wow, that sounded like on fire outside my window. Welcome to Pacoima. Anyway, sorry about that. So we were there there's about 330,000 people. I will say Memorial Day, when you're in a crowd like that, which I've never been in my life, and they play taps, and you could literally hear a pin drop if somebody dropped it, is one of the more moving moments that I've been a part of, to tell you the truth. For that time before the race, there is a true, I think, reverence for the people that did sacrifice their life, and what I would say, especially in World War II and in conflicts that maybe we all still believe were just. I don't know if you want to call it just. I don't know, but that sort of thing is definitely in the air, and a respect for the nation and people coming together. That was my experience there. That was in 2018, right before the pandemic. I did have a pretty moving experience there for Memorial Day before the race, and I know it's kind of a mixy weekend, I think, for a lot of people. Or it can be, and it's kind of a strange combination to combine it with such huge entertainment. But in that moment, it was very impactful, I will say. And I also thought it was interesting this year, before Indianapolis, there's always a lot of drama and people arguing about the renditions of the national anthem. Did you guys happen to see Jewel do the national anthem?
I did.
Okay, and I had this reaction to it. I really thought, and it was interesting, I thought she rendered it a very mournful song for the occasion, which was the first time that I had heard someone do a rendition like that. And some people are, of course, upset when anything changes. But I thought it was very moving. It was a very moving moment, the way she changed the song into kind of a folk song. And it wasn't as bombastic and celebratory as it can be, at other times, which I think is appropriate for other times. But in this time, I thought it was excellent. I thought she did an excellent job. So I guess on to the race. So we had our picks, right? Kanaan, my Kanaan pick, not great. I think he ended up 14th or 15th in his last run. He was running in the top 10 for quite a while, but then he faded out. Let's see.
Well, in fairness too, the last 15 laps were an absolute goat rope. I mean,
yeah, we'll talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I know we'll get to that. So like he could have had a better result is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I
but
think so. And he did go four-wheeling through the grass, which is hilarious. I don't know if you saw, he put up
that was, yes.
So he went through the grass in a very aggressive moment, and after the race, he put up a Google map where he put Tony's like
Lawn mowing service, yeah.
and he dropped a pin there, which is like, freaking hilarious.
At 220, by the way, he was going 220 at the time through the grass to pass somebody. It was
that was pretty amazing. So
quite a moment.
Yeah, that's old school Tony. But let's see who else. Oh well, Ed picked Rossi, and he actually did extremely well. He was fifth overall in the end. Look at you up there. And then my more heady pick than Kanaan did pretty well, which was Santino Ferrucci did well. I actually thought he was going to win the race, but it did not quite happen. And then Brian, you picked Dixie, and he actually ended up pretty decent in the end. He had a mistake. He had a problem in the beginning where he was driving a car that was absolutely evil. In slow motion, the entire car was shaking at 200 miles an hour. He had such a terrible imbalance with a wheel. But my God, the guy drove it until he could, the earliest moment he could pit, and then he fought his way back to. I'm not sure where he finished, Brian. Did he finish like 8th?
Yeah, he ended up being top 10, I believe, at the end, but just barely.
I mean, what a drive, honestly. Just because with everything we're going to talk about in a second. So McLaren had a bunch of issues. So here's the thing. So what I think we should talk about quickly, and I'm very curious, Brian, what you have to say about this, because we have talked so much about the format of NASCAR, the format of IndyCar, the format of Formula One car, right? How they compare. And IndyCar, I think you would agree, took a little page out of NASCAR's book this weekend. And I have to say, as a fan, like as a spectator, the drama was unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
It was unbelievable what they did. The drama and the racing. I knew who was going to win when they restarted it the way they did. However, was it? What did you think? What did you think of the decision? Because it goes against. I mean, we've had many Indy 500s finish under yellow previously. A lot of car races finish under yellow, but in this particular case, they decided to restart it with 2 laps left, and actually only got, I think, 1 green.
It was 1 green at the end, yeah, which was the just a little bit more context. They ended up having a rough last 15 laps as the drivers were getting more and more angsty coming towards the end. They kept having more incidents, and they would have a caution, which would breed another caution, which would breed another caution. We all hear that old adage within racing that cautions breed cautions. Gesundheit. But so we ended up having, was it 3 red flags in the last 15 laps?
Yeah, 3 red flags in the last 15.
The ultimate that payoff of being able to finish the race under green and having that last lap pass and having these guys battle it out to the death, so to speak, was definitely electric. And my kids who weren't even into racing, they were watching and they were excited, and my girlfriend was excited, and I was screaming at the TV. So there's definitely it did what it was intended. However, the racing purist in me and a lot of others definitely took issue with the almost blatant showmanship that was going on, as opposed to running the event as nature intends, so to speak.
Well, it was an extremely popular win, I think. Newgarden. Yes. So I don't know. Have you been watching Indy or 100 Days to Indy?
My girlfriend and I watched the whole series in the week leading up, and it's excellent. It is so much better than Drive to Survive. Like she thinks so.
I agree, and also, but isn't it crazy that Newgarden ends up winning? I mean, it's so storybook that it's suspect.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people are like, of course they red flagged it, you know, because it's just the way it shapes up with the television show is incredible. You know, but I honestly, I don't know. I guess I feel a little mixed about his win, but I loved his celebration.
Celebration was excellent. Yeah, that was a hell of a thing.
It was incredibly entertaining. I mean, he's an amazing driver. He deserves all of it. I wish that it would have been great if Award hadn't you know, wrecked himself, and you know, if we could have had an actual green finish, it would have been cool.
I think there was that's definitely you know, a debate, I think, between Award taking himself out with that, or whether it was Ericsson cutting down on him, because watching the replay, he's ahead of Ericsson going into the quarter.
Oh, is he really?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
by a decent bit, and but Ericsson closes down on him, and he backs out, and he loses it, and he goes too low, and that's why he ended up wrecking.
And it must be said, I think, that Ericsson, who came in second, was unhappy with.
Yeah, and to his point specifically, he was upset because, like, they did the Reds, and he, I think he was kind of a little miffed with that. But specifically, what Indy had never done before, and this is kind of a harkening back to Abu Dhabi in 2021 in F1.
Yeah.
Changing the rules up at the last moment in order to satisfy the show, where never before has Indy gone to green straight out of the pits. The first time by they do at least one lap to let the drivers get their head in the game, get the tires warm, the tires warm most specifically is kind of the biggest concern. So that was done definitely in order to have one last bonsai lap, which is, one might argue, is a little bit of a safety thing, and again trying to get in the way a little bit from what if a racing purist would say is you know, the right thing. But I wanted to mention really quick also the wreck that happened earlier in the race. And we're just talking about wrecks right now, which is unfortunate, because for the first 3/4 of the race, it was almost pure green flag racing, which was fantastic. It was you know, 400 miles of green flag racing, which was great. But there were a couple incidents, and one that was a super big heart and throat moment was when Kyle Kirkwood got collected in an incident and got turned upside down. And getting turned upside down was scary enough, but rear wheel and suspension was sheared off. The tires are all tethered, so the wheels aren't supposed to go flying off the car. And in this case, the whole Indy said afterwards, there was not a failure of the tether. It was the entire wheel hub and assembly and part of the suspension that sheared off the car entirely and went flying out of the track and missed the stands by way too close, and ended up smashing a vehicle outside the track. Thankfully, it didn't hit anybody. And there was the woman whose car got destroyed is getting her car replaced by Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But yeah, that would have been a tragedy. It would have absolutely killed people if it had landed in the stands. And it was yes, it has happened before. Yeah.
That's
so
amazing.
they have these huge, you know, fences over everything, but they can't. I mean, you know, you can't prevent every single eventuality. And it was so scary.
It was a bit of a freak accident because, the last time I think was in the 90s, early 2000s, the last time a tire went over the retaining fence, because the fences are tall. I mean, they're really high. I mean, I want to say they're 20, 25 feet or something, and they're angled
over too.
but the way the wreck happened and the way it sheared, this thing catapulted with like 220 miles of energy just straight up into the sky. It was crazy. I have not seen something like that in many years.
And he was upside down. And what's crazy is that what's also crazy and the in-car cam remained live.
Yeah,
the
one of the first
entire-
times we've ever seen that.
And the driver Kyle Kirkwood is upside down at 200 miles an hour, scraping on the halo, and you're in there with him. I mean, that was, again, like I'm sorry to talk about. I don't watch racing for crashes, but of course, the risk and what can happen does make it a dramatic sport. And that was dramatic.
Yeah, it was spectacular in the definition sense of the word. Like it was something that we've almost never seen before either, because normally in open wheel cars, when the car goes upside down, the camera is smashed. And this was an in-car camera, because they have the visors now which protect the drivers, so the camera was inside the visor looking back at him. And as he was upside down, you caught this and I didn't. I thought that by the impact it had blasted his visor open, but it wasn't the case. He was disoriented going upside down, and he opened the visor while he's scraping at 200 miles an hour with sparks flying everywhere. He opened his visor to try to reorient himself, and then I think kind of realized, oh shit,
we're still doing this. He puts
Yeah.
it down. Yeah, that was wild. Well, so the 500 then, that was just, I don't know. Overall, I don't know. You can't do much more. I mean, that's a pretty.
Honestly, the yellow flag endings, are disappointing, but there's still that the event in and of itself is just this stellar, amazing, incredible, life happening. Which is great, but this one, every time it does get to finish under green, it is I'm jumping up and down screaming at whoever it is that's coming to the line. So that was fun.
Who did we watch together when we were all screaming and jumping around?
It was Helio. It was Helio getting his fourth.
Yeah,
that was a hell of a thing. Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. All right, cool. So that's the Indy 500. Let's move on to Charlotte, and then we have politics coming in. So some things happened in Charlotte that are pretty crazy. I'll try to get to them. Today's huge news was that Stewart-Haas Racing and the number 14 with Chase Briscoe, they actually found on this car when they tore it down, because what they do is they randomly grab cars off of each race and then they tear them down and check and make sure that they're cool. 95% of the time, they get torn down, they get put back together, everyone shakes hands, and we're good. In this case, they have levied the highest penalty that's ever been given in the history of NASCAR. What they had done is they had actually made counterfeit parts that to the naked eye, if you looked at it in just regular inspection before the race, you would never know they were counterfeit, because the outside of these parts, they had stamped with correct fonts and correct colors and however it's supposed to look from the outside. It looked exactly like that. But when they tore it apart, they found that they were counterfeit parts made not by the single source supplier that they're supposed to use, but made by themselves. So they had to fabricate this stuff. They had to go get something that would stamp it correctly and the right colors and this is like a major effort to cheat. And
which is hilarious, because this is a car that's finishing 30th on a regular basis. So at least cheat well. Like, what are you doing?
But maybe the finishing 30th pushed them into trying to do stuff. Yes, Ed.
Wait. Ed's going to say something.
What's the advantage of counterfeit parts?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So this has to do this part, if I remember correctly from what I read today. This part has to do with air management. So this is really when you're managing downforce, how much downforce you have. It's all about how the air flows through the car, and this, I guess, was a front engine.
It was intake, right? Actually.
Yeah, so the way they're flowing air through the car, it has a huge effect. You're going 200 miles an hour, and how the air is flowing through the car, how it's flowing over the car, all these things. It's really one of the strongest way you can manipulate how the car handles and how fast it might be. Go ahead, Brian.
What's still unclear to me, though, is to Ed's question, what is it that they were thinking that they were benefiting out of this? To me, that's still unclear, but I haven't read enough into it yet either, because this just came out today.
Yeah, well, I imagine. I mean, and of course, the team says, and I'm sorry to say, I don't believe them. That they're like, oh, this is a quality control thing. The part shouldn't have been on the car. We're not going to appeal the finding, and they're just moving on. But there's $250,000 fine. Yeah. That is a giant chunk of change. 120 points off of the team and off of the driver. That kills your entire season.
That is legitimately significantly the largest point total that I think has ever been taken. Yeah. Like there in this point system, because the point system used to be, I still remember the point system in my head from like the 90s and 2000s, but the newer point system, that is a significantly larger chunk. That's like multiple races worth of points, as opposed to just like normally what used to be like one race worth of points or something like that.
They also lost their crew chief for 6 weeks, yeah, which is also a big blow. And then 25 playoff points. So even if he somehow wins a race later and gets into the playoffs, he starts with a 25-point hole on top of whatever hole he's in regular points. So it's like, I mean, there's a possibility that he could still make it into the playoffs, but this has killed their chances for all intents and purposes.
Yeah,
their season's over. This is anyway. So and I believe, like, they're not appealing it, so they just got caught is the way I'm looking at it. Because why are you fabricating your own counterfeit parts and then bolting them on your race car for the weekend?
Well, and it's doubly interesting to me, though, because once again, we don't really know to what extent this was affecting their performance. Whether it was or not, that's its own conversation. But NASCAR's legendary for its arbitrary dealing with cheating and with teams finding the quote unquote unfair advantage. Like there's been so many cases of it through the years where everybody knew and nothing was done about it, or there's plenty of cases where they didn't know what they're doing, but they know that something's going on with that car, and they don't do anything about it, or there'll be the crew chief that gets suspended for 6 weeks, but there's no points taken off, or there's points taken off, but or there's a $10,000 fine, or like there's just no regularity to it whatsoever.
But I think they're getting beyond that with this car and with the new published rules and all that, and especially this is a huge hammer and a message to everybody in the
definitely
in the garage that we're not around, we are not joking, and this is if you guys want to play this way, we're gonna end your season. I mean, that's what's happening. So I don't know how scared everybody is in the garage right now. They're getting picked next week, but probably are scared. And I don't know how much stuff might be coming out of these cars, that people are doing. But so that was interesting today. The other thing that happened was the most popular driver in the series, arguably Chase Elliott, which is also Ethan's favorite driver. He's the Napa. He drives for Napa, and he drives a Chevrolet for Hendrick. He hooked Denny Hamlin in the 11 in the right rear and stuffed him in a very, very violent crash into the wall. Just got frustrated with Denny leaning on him a lot for a couple of laps, and just put him into the wall. And Denny gets out of the car and says he shouldn't be racing next week, and if he gets out of the infirmary, and then he goes to his trailer and looks at, I guess everyone has access to the
Data and analytics, yeah. Mhm.
analytics of all the cars, and he screenshots it and he puts it out on Twitter and says, "This cat did this on purpose. Here's the proof." And he should be suspended. Well, it turns out yesterday they announced, yes, he's being suspended. So they're suspending Chase Elliott, the most popular driver, for a week. He did the same thing that Bubba did. I mean, people are talking about differences, whatever. Both very high speed, right rear hooks into the wall. This one was a much more head-on crash, though. Kyle didn't hit head-on at all at Vegas, but this was pure head-on wreck. Destroyed the car and put Denny through a lot. They showed the in-car of that as well. So he's been suspended, and Corey LaJoie, one of my favorite stories in NASCAR, is going to run the 9 this week. I don't know if you saw that, Brian. So they're popping him in there. The other dramatic thing that happened was that Bubba Wallace and Eric Almirola got in a little tiff in one of the rain delays, and I'll get back to that in a second. My guy Bubba kept falling down to 21st and 19th and all this stuff, having terrible times in the pits and all that. He ended up coming 4th, which is a huge run for him. And lastly, the winner, of course, was
Ryan Blaney.
Ryan Blaney wins. Bubba's best friend.
Penske doubles up on Memorial Day weekend. It's the first time they've ever done that.
Exactly. Penske wins twice, and Blaney is a hugely popular guy, and he also jumps into the crowd and does the crowd surfing thing, kind of in a way. And they all celebrate that way. And so there's something I think, but basically it was an awesome race. It was a fantastic race. It was really well. That again had all kinds of drama and back and forth, comers and goers. Blaney did dominate, but the entire race was very competitive, I thought, and super entertaining. It happened on Memorial Day this year because it was rained out the day before. One thing that is, since I'm a Bubba Wallace fan, I'm constantly inundated with all kinds of, anytime I go to a page, all kinds of bigoted and messed up opinions and statements, just wide open racist stuff on the constant. And one of the things that's happened was this guy, Eric Almirola, another driver, he had a problem with Bubba. Apparently Bubba flicked him off because he was holding him up. And these drivers do this all the time to each other. They're constantly doing it. But anyway, he flicked him off apparently. And then Eric Almirola comes to talk to him, and Bubba, I guess basically Eric was yelling at him. Bubba yells at him back, and then Eric shoves Bubba. All right. A friend of mine, a Facebook friend of mine, actually took the video that Fox showed, and I saw her entire video, not just the piece that they showed on Fox. My point is this: Eric Almirola shoves Bubba Wallace. This is the video that we see, right? And all these people come on and say, Bubba Wallace should be kicked out of thing. He's the problem. He's violent. He's scary. I mean, the video is of him.
Scary. Wow.
Yeah, is of him getting, he's the person.
He's the one that gets shoved, and he doesn't do anything.
He
He
doesn't do
literally
it.
just stands. Yeah, he doesn't do anything.
I mean, he yells at him. He gives him a bunch of lip, and then they go back and forth for quite a while. But he doesn't respond physically in any way. But
Nope.
all these comments are all like, like he was the perp, right? And so I just wanted to kind of maybe just transition into, our politics side of the conversation, which is about like counterfeit stuff, perception, information, how we interpret information based on our beliefs. I mean, people are watching this video of one man hitting another man and then saying the man that got hit was doing the hitting. I mean, it's like,
Well,
it reminds me of.
go ahead, Ed.
Well, I was just the first thing it reminds me of is the Marjorie Taylor Greene incident a couple of weeks ago, where she got into a shouting match with, I believe, another congressman,
Jamal Bowman, I think.
and
Yeah.
used the same. They remind themselves of the language they have at their disposal, the dog whistles and the routine language they use. Scary, out of control, dangerous, those kinds of things.
Thug.
So it doesn't matter who's actually the aggressor. The move is you get the person to react, then you get to turn around and go, see, they're scary, they're dangerous, they're a problem. It's kind of classic. It's kind of a classic move.
Yeah.
Well, it's all based in fear. I mean, that's always where you have to go immediately in order to continue the oppression, because the only
Right.
way that people that's the most effective way for people to respond and remain within that status quo.
If it happened to me, it could happen to you. They're scary. They have to be taken care of. They
The
have
real
to be.
the real question is why does Bubba have to keep perpetrating these hate crimes? Uh,
I know, but and the thing is, like, it just gets more and more obvious, and maybe it's a lesson. I mean, maybe it's a lesson for everybody, but maybe in different ways for different folks. But I mean, here's a driver who the last 4 of the last 5 races he's finished in the top 5. All right, in the highest level stock racing, stock car racing thing in the world, the most competitive, where people are putting, everything on the line to cheat to try to compete in it, right? And here he is doing this thing, and we still have, the social media just littered with he can't drive. I mean, it's like watching someone put up 45 points in a NBA playoff game and saying that guy can't play basketball.
Right.
And this is where it comes into this like belief, perception, filtering thing. And I'm not going to say, that I'm impervious to it at all. And I'm going to go into maybe, or just offer a couple of examples. And one very, very recent example for me, where I realized, like, holy shit, man, I got to slow down with my inhaling of information and then putting it back out there. And I've got one example just recently. I actually called Ed, super pissed off.
What do you do, Ed?
Well,
Sorry.
so I had read the story, a headline, and then some of the story, an early story about the designer that Target hired to design a bag and a shirt, and I don't know what else, a pair of socks. I don't know. I don't remember what the third thing was, but like 3 things. Is a transgender person that designed these things for Pride Month. And the artist had basically kind of created some art on their own, in their own website, in their own places, that was like a trolling type of ironic deal, you comes to find out that featured Satan. Like Satan loves pronouns, right? He's trolling for, action, right? With that, and or creating. He had a few things that were. He's like, well, if you're going to call homosexuality Satanist, then I'm going to embrace that, and I'm going to put it on, some of my art and some of my product. Well, the early coverage of him being hired said he was a Satanist, like CNN stuff, like, not right-wing stuff, but they had said, oh, he has Satanist connections or whatever it was. Turns out, in the conversation with Ed, he was researching it, and then also in further coverage and discovery of who this person was and what he was doing, not true at all. And, the person's an atheist. They're not a Satanist. I mean, maybe an atheist is bad enough. But I had gone to, what the frick are you thinking, Target? What are you trying? You're hurting everything. Like, you need to, what are you doing? Because I had embraced these lines in the coverage that said, this person was Satanist connected, or was a Satanist, right? So I'm just giving that as an example. I had internalized that, and grabbed it, and just I had a whole thing, I might have had a 15-minute rant for Ed based on what turned out to be misinformation.
So for clarity's sake, for my sake, make sure I'm understanding this correctly. The byline was that this artist was a Satanist, created Satanist paraphernalia of some kind that Target then sold.
Well,
And there was outcry. Right. But that's what the story was. That's what you were taking, Jeremy, and you were.
No,
and
the story was that they hired, not that the stuff that it was in the Target was Satanist, but that his own art was Satanist, and that he was Satanist adjacent. I forget the word they used. Satanist connected, or I forget the word. Mm-hmm. But it was like essentially, and of course this is what the what people had focused on. And then people are actually running into Targets and destroying stuff, throwing things on the ground, being verbally violent with people that were working there. And Target decided to pull some of these items off, and then to move their Pride stuff to the back of their stores instead of the front, so that people wouldn't be end up getting attacked by these people.
And which part? Sorry, Jeremy. Which part was it that you were actually frustrated with?
So I was like, what the hell are you doing? Not vetting your artist? Like, why would you bring a Satanist in to create items for your store, knowing that it just felt so incredibly stupid, because the way I had gotten the story was that if you're trying to help, maybe the thing wouldn't be to do exactly what they already think you're doing, which is having a Satanist groom their child into being gay. Do you see what I'm saying?
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. Sorry to.
Sure.
One clarity there.
Ed, hand is up.
For the sanity now.
So, first of all, Jeremy reacted exactly like the consumer of this sort of news-ish entertainment content is supposed. That's what you were supposed to do, Jeremy. You're supposed to see those words and have that reaction. CNN actually did a classic yellow journalism technique, which is in the headline, they put Satanist in soft quotes. So they didn't report that he's a Satanist. They reported that somebody else said he's a Satanist, and that on his website he has this and that, what the actual connection with Satan was, which is one thing. The joke, Satan supports pronouns. And the very last paragraph of the article is he laughs and says, actually, believe it or not, I'm not a Satanist. And it's a classic yellow journalism move for sensationalism. It's the sensationalism version of journalism that we get so much these days, where it's not about delivering an accurate representation, because headline writing is an art form. Like there's a way to do it. And the way they use the passive voice so that certain people shoot other people get killed by guns.
Yep.
Or or cars. Sometimes
it's shorthand editorialism.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes cars do the killing. Sometimes people do the killing in cars, right? Depending on how you I read a really great tweet. I should have written it down, and I should have written down the author, because it was a brilliant observation. The passive voice dismisses whole classes of people who kill.
Yep.
Because it's not them doing it. It's guns, it's cars, killed by an automatic weapon, killed by a handgun, and it muddies the water, it confuses people, it makes it unclear how to argue. And this is a classic example of how part of the reason newspapers were such a great learning tool was because they were written at a certain level. They were written when I was reading newspapers, they were written on an 8th grade level. So you had to write, and therefore you had to read on an 8th grade level. But I used to take classes in how to read a newspaper. Read the headline. All right. Who's doing what to whom? What do you already know about how this is operating? What's not there? What's missing? What's missing from this article? Who's not represented? All these things. And it's just critical thinking in terms of consuming news. But of course, now
It's literary critical thinking, and it's closely, especially when it comes to news and politics, it's closely adjoined to civics, which we are woefully, I can't see what it says there, Ed.
and it's also very closely associated with
propaganda, of course, yeah. So
and propaganda. I'm reading Bernays. This is Edward Bernays, 1920s propaganda, and how he's like, it's not a propaganda. Like, we all use propaganda. We propagandize. We sell things. We present ourselves. We show our best. Like we do. Sure. This is something we do, and propaganda's got a bad rap. Because in the especially 20th century, when they took a lot of his ideas and people who were working around with his ideas, and we saw the worst of the worst of the worst of what mass indoctrination can look like. Everything from Nazi Germany to Jim Jones to Scientology to the Catholic Church, the whole thing. And it's not new. It's been going on since we've been walking the earth.
Well, and on a much grander scale now, we're talking about just literally the liberal mainstream media that uses it just as effectively and just as with just as much misinformation in order to push money and push capitalist movement. It's
all clickbait. It's clickbait. It's eyeballs. It's attention span. Like the attention. What is it? The attention economy.
Well, and that's almost giving it too little credit, I feel like, because that's definitely the case. Because we're in the even journalists are in the gig economy where you got to get eyeballs, you got to get ad space, you got to get like it faster. And that's, while that's true, there's so many media narratives that are threaded together in order to push different kinds of propagandized most initiatives. We're so concerned with all things woke. Like, that is all that we can fucking talk about across this damn country, whether it be that you are woke or you're not, and it's terrible that you are, or it's terrible that you're not. Like, that's the damn issue going into 2024. Like, that's all we're talking about. That's what the mainstream media is pushing on, because meanwhile, sorry to be a broken record, but the billionaires are running off with all the winnings and many other different class related problems that we have. We have no healthcare. We have no, guns are killing people like at the worst numbers of all time. Like, all of these enormous problems. We're at war in Ukraine, a proxy war with Russia in Ukraine, and we're putting tens of billions into that. Don't worry about all of those things. Like, fucking Bud Light has a rainbow on it. Like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, this is the kind of thing that CNN, and MSNBC and Fox and the New York Times and all of the mainstream establishment news media are pushing. They're pushing these stories and these narratives that are completely obfuscating what's going on in the background while the earth is burning itself to a crisp.
Well, they're fighting for They're fighting for ad space. It's all a fight for ad space. And, just like, we're putting up so much junk in the stratosphere, but I gotta kill your satellite so my satellite has a place to sit. I'll kill your satellite.
And that's part of it. But I think that there's just as much intergovernmental work here going on as much as there is. Again, you're right. Like, it is a clobbering behemoth of idiots all fighting their way to the top to try to get the most ad space. That's absolutely true. But at the same time, I think that there are enough governmental and political initiatives that are moving this, moving these different stories, and moving these kinds of propagandized material on a constant basis. It's psyop after psyop after psyop. It's the revolving door between government and media is, as well as government and finance. They just swing. It's like, right.
If you're a CEO, you could be a CEO of a car company, and then be a CEO of a media company, and be a CEO of a telecompany. Like, it doesn't really matter what is you're selling. You're a lobbyist. Everybody's a lobbyist. And so whether I'm lobbying you to kill that story about the senator, or I'm the CEO of the network saying we're killing that story about the senator, or we're an advertiser who's saying we're not going to advertise you if you keep running. Like, it can work so many ways. And the question comes back. It's like, what doesn't $1 billion buy you? What can you not buy with $1 billion?
Right. So here's something I thought maybe that's a good segue into another story that I actually shared with Brian. I don't think I shared it with you, Ed, yet, but there was a story in the business section that came across my feed, as we like to call it, right? That was it was in the business section, and what it was they've come to a settlement. I'm not sure if it's entirely. Oh
yes, I know where you're going, buddy.
The fentanyl, the family that is
Sacklers.
Yes, that is responsible for the largely, I would say,
yep.
for the fentanyl epidemic, which we talked about a couple of episodes about in depth.
Yep.
They've been able to buy their freedom for $6 billion. So they're not only did they buy their freedom, they bought
All future
Yeah.
freedom.
Well-
They can never be held accountable.
exactly. So you, as a private citizen who, let's say my dad got hooked on this shit because you told him it wasn't addictive and then he killed himself on it. I can no longer, because they're giving $6 billion to the states or wherever they're giving it. I've my rights to sue that company for what they did to my family member are gone. And then the other thing that they did, which just really is amazing to me, is that as part of this settlement, if anyone removes their name from a building or a library or something that they, gave or helped build or whatever, they won't be disparaged.
Can't
All right.
make them look bad.
They can't make them look bad. So they can't
You
be
can't hurt their feelings
like, you
for all the murder. You
For-
can't hurt their feelings for all the murder they
right.
brought about.
I think it's 500. Well, I think with the number, if I'm not incorrect, I don't remember the exact number, but I think it's about 520,000 people that have fallen to this epidemic of opioid addiction.
Well, that's just
500
and just to jump in, and that's the people who died.
Right.
Those are the people who died. That's not the people who got strung out for years on a drug they didn't need. All the corruption, all the way down the system of corruption, the doctors and the drug sales folk and the whole organ, like it was a whole organization. Doesn't HBO have two different documentaries about, there are multiple documentaries about Crime of the Century is one of them.
Yeah.
But you can't hurt their feelings, Jeremy. You can't hurt their feelings.
I mean, this is what it's all shit. But that really, it was just like the top of all tops. Like, we're gonna settle this epidemic we created that we profited from in the billions. We're not only going to just give money to, okay, God, great. Like, they're gonna have money to fight the epidemic. We're getting $500 million, I think, in California, to help with this. So, okay, fine. Good, yes, but to shield yourself with money directly from prosecution, from further money problems, and from having your feelings fucking hurt.
It's a
hurt their
farce.
feelings.
It's a farce. I just pulled up
Yeah.
just a quick Google search, Purdue Pharma profits. That's all I searched. First article is from Forbes in 2019. Sackler's made more than $12 billion in profit from Oxy. That's as of 2019.
Yeah. So they were
But
like,
then all they paid out, so they paid half of what they had made back then. That were 7 years, however many years, I can't do math. Apparently 4 years since then.
so this is like,
They
invested that 12 billion. Now then they have 30 billion, and then they pay
Whatever.
some back, and they're
It's
they're-
an absolute farce.
This is
Yeah.
So okay.
It's broke, man. It's broke.
And then meanwhile, let's pile on a little bit. I don't know how this relates. Maybe someone else can make a connection. But another story that I read that I read multiple sources. So I read multiple sources. And
There you go.
true story. And this is the thing that everybody has to slow down. And on this story, I slowed down and I read it in a bunch of different spots. So, organizations like Patriots for Freedom and Patriots for this and Patriots for that and Freedom Fighters for this and Freedom for that, they've been selling, I won't say his name. They've been selling Orange Man bucks. Are you guys aware of this story? They're selling,
No.
they're selling fake,
$100. They're $100 bills.
they're fake $100.
There's that many people from Syracuse University. That was an obscure reference. Sorry. Okay, continue.
Yes, Dan Hull says "Moms for Liberty." I mean, I don't know if they're involved, but
Oh,
but this is
ugh.
what they do, right? They put their name on it. They're like, they're patriots, they're freedom fighters, they're this, they're that, and they're selling you a pillow or they're selling you some bullshit, whatever they're selling you. But in this case, they're selling you counterfeit, not even counterfeit. They didn't even do that much work. They just created fake dollar bills, $100 bills.
Novelty. It's novelty money.
But they told the people that in a year they could turn it into Wells Fargo or Bank of America or whatever, and it would be real currency.
I didn't know that part.
Yes, so
That's great.
people are talking like, I read Rolling Stone, I read Forbes, I read
Wow.
Time magazine. They're all covering the story, and you have people, unfortunately, older people are just
Generally.
built, and they spent like $10,000 on this stuff, and then they're taking it in a year later. Back, I mean, it's kind of it's sad, but like they're bringing it in to like try to turn it in, and it's monopoly money with the orange man's face on it. I mean, we live in a crazy environment right now with so much counterfeit stuff. And to bring it like full circle, like I just feel like we all now are required to be the NASCAR teardown people with you can't take anything at face value.
It's the same Chapel Perilous thing that I've talked about a couple times, where you have to. It's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting, and the only way to be able to maintain your sanity is to like literally check out for a time. Like Ed, go hang out with some trees for a while. Like it's you can't keep up. You can't keep up. It's on
Dan Hall
purpose.
called it redneck Bitcoin, which I think is funny.
Yeah, I was thinking of NFTs while you were like not.
So
Yeah.
can I mention one more thing? And then Tara Reid comes across the screen today. I don't know if you guys saw that, but that's a story, and that was a thing. That was an op. If you want to talk about psyops, that I believe that's not a psyop from the United States. It's a psyop from elsewhere, where Tara Reid comes forward and uses the Me Too situation, against Biden. Today she defects. She was supposed to come in and I guess testify in front of Matt Gaetz and all these people. Again, they're going after Biden through using these committees that they've created now that they've taken over Congress. So she had accused Biden in 1990, I think it was, of molesting her. And there was some debate back and forth. Some people exposed her at the time and took incredible heat. A lot of people that I agree with politically, of course, jumped right on it and right on her story. And I don't know, it faded away because there were people doing research on her life and on things she'd been involved with, all those kinds of things, and they discredited her. But it's very difficult because what do we do to rape victims, right? What do? We discredit them, right? When we're trying to defend ourselves. So it's a very murky situation. But today she shows up in Russia next to a convicted spy on Sputnik, I think is the name of the television, the national Russian television, saying she left America because there's bad roads and she felt very unsafe there, and that her life was in danger or something. And then she feels safe in Russia. So it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. I think I am personally myself in that time, I was on both sides of that thing. I think when I started, I again had the same kind of pattern where I grabbed it sort of hook, line, and sinker. And then with more research, I ended up kind of posting, because at that time I was very politically active online. I ended up recanting and saying like, this isn't so straightforward or what have you, right? But that's kind of my pattern. Like I have to admit, like I have an emotional reaction And sometimes I'll really bite hard, and then I'll do more research and mitigate my own point of view, right? I'm glad that I end up doing more research, but I'm trying to work on mitigating that first bit, right? That's why I'm studying the Stoics and reading them and doing all that. It's like, take a breath before you react or act, call Ed Goodman and let him hear your bullshit. And then he'll help straighten you out, a little bit. Thank you, Ed. So anyway, so I just feel like it's a big lesson, and it's something, it's too bad, but if you're going to be an informed person right now, there is a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, and I think it's even worse than what you expect, because the more that I understand and the more that I learn, the less, especially as soon as that R word gets introduced, anything Russia related right now, or China for that matter, but especially Russia, is I don't trust an absolute damn thing that the mainstream media is pushing about Russia.
But do you trust Sputnik? This is actually an honest question. Do you trust Tara Reid next to a convicted spy saying that she feels safe in Russia, that she was telling the truth about Biden?
I need to look into it, because I'm going into this cold. I don't know anything else about it. I've been looking up the headlines while you've been talking.
Yeah.
And just because all of the headlines say the same thing, especially as it relates to Russia, does not mean that there's probably some truth to it, and there's probably some manipulation to it, because if it has anything to do with Russia or Putin or Assange or Snowden, or as soon as you start going down that path, you start getting into CIA territory right away. And it is ingrained into CNN and into New York Times, even at the BBC. Bellingcat is involved with their media operations across Europe. We are in a direct proxy war with Russia, and so anything and everything Russia related has some propaganda attached to it. I don't know what the situation is with Tara Reid. Like I said, literally going into this, listening to you is the first time I've heard anything about it.
I mean, I'm curious. I mean, it's a good example. It's a good example, and of course, it seems clear to me, but then again, I've told you my pattern. So but it does seem clear to me that when you defect to the, and certainly in the election between Trump and Biden, there was Russia certainly favored one of those candidates. They were clear about it, and he was clear about it. They were public about it. So, anything that can be done to, I think, whatever could be done would be done. And that's not new. That's nothing new. That's everybody's effing with everybody else's information in elections. It's like we said, it is a minefield to walk through,
The more, like I said, the more that I read and learn about the way that we have operated with Russia, especially over the last 30 odd years since the fall of the USSR, the more it seems obvious to me that the way that they are represented to us in the mainstream is not really honest. And that's not to say that that I'm pro-Russia or that them engaging with Ukraine is a justified thing or anything like that. But I think
I'm
that the way
I'm pro-Russia. I'm pro-Russians. I don't think I'm pro-Putin. But I definitely, I you know what I mean? Like
sure. That, and yeah, that's fine to say. But I think the way that they're portrayed and the way that it is generally, and I'm not saying that you're saying this, but like the way that Putin is portrayed often is like this diabolical Hitler-esque kind of scheming crazy person because he's engaged in this war in Ukraine, and it's just not true. Like, he's not a good dude by any means, and he associates with some really terrible people, but so does our leadership. And the way that it has been kind of portrayed that Russia entered into this conflict with Ukraine is very disingenuous. It was made out as though Russia's just, or that Putin's just out for power and wants to take over the world and reunite the USSR. And that's not entirely inaccurate, but there's also a lot of strategic elements that went into this, especially with the push from NATO moving eastward, and the way that the northern Europe plains, with those NATO countries closing in on Russia, has pressured them to have a kind of a strategic defense. There's a lot of economic factors with fuel and natural gas deposits that are available offshore from Ukraine. And there's the water problem with the people that live in Crimea that Russia took control of in 2014, along with the ethnically Russian regions there, Luhansk and Donbass near Crimea. That there's all of these different swirling motions that led to where we are today. And I think it's just generally like this acknowledged thing in America that Putin's just a fucking crazy guy. And why are they doing this? And of course we have to send tens of billions of dollars to Ukraine. And I'm not to say not to support Ukraine, but again, there's just, it's such a glazed on view of the rest of the world that most of us normally get and is normally portrayed in our mainstream media, that we miss out on so much granularity.
So I would just say, like, from my point of view,
I know I went off track there a little bit.
No, that's okay though. You see that really hits the heart of it, which is that, okay, there has to be room for rational debate about all kinds of things, correct? And when we have an agreed upon set of, let's say, facts, okay, Russia invaded Ukraine, that's a fact. Then we can talk about the history, the way this has all happened, the reasons why, from his point of view, from Russia's point of view, they needed to do this. The thing that bothers me a lot about the left version of, or the left look at what's going on there is, I do remember, and I'm part of a very, liberal crew of people on social media, or I used to be much more so. There was a huge move or push saying that our intelligence was lying. I remember at the time Russia saying they were not going to invade, that all the massive, all their weapons and all their troops and all their stuff on the border wasn't happening, that it didn't exist, that the United States was making it up. I remember them going to the UN and saying all this stuff, right? And
then overnight they invaded.
And then they invaded. Wait, listen, I want to finish though.
Yeah.
They invade. Now, I don't expect Russia to be like, hey, here's our next play. Whatever. I'm not even going to talk about that. But what I'm going to talk about, though, is my friends, right? My friends on the left who are like, this is all bullshit. This is all made up by the United States. It's never going to happen. They've lied to us about Iraq. They lied to us. And then when the invasion happened, they didn't go to, oh shit, I guess that was going to happen. Or there was none of that. We went immediately, right, 180 degrees to the United States caused it. So I think it's more complicated, much more complicated than that too, right? There's like you said, there's all kinds of things working. But what's missing, is something that I think hopefully I've tried to develop for myself, which is that second bit, which is like, oh shit, I was fucking wrong. And I need to take a relook at what my belief systems are and where my facts are, or what I believe to be fact. And that that was a huge thing. Also, I have literal friends, actual friends, real life friends that are working with organizations in Ukraine and looking at the way the war is being persecuted there, and all war is avoidable, and hopefully, we could get beyond it at some point in human existence. However, the way that whole thing is going down is not covering it. Honestly, we're not covering it. It's like we're watching, and I'm sorry to say I'm part of it, but we're watching the Indy 500 and having
Sure.
a day and drinking my Dr. Pepper, and we're not covering either any of the suffering that's happening there.
Well, that was so last year, man. Like, come on, we got to get on to the next thing now. It's the Bud Light is gay now.
Right.
Right.
And so I know we disagree somewhat on this, Brian, but I also appreciate the conversation, because I certainly don't know everything that's going on with everything. And, I'm sure Russia has reasons and interests. But I certainly hope they lose, and that that this is a bad thing for them. And I would certainly like them to stop.
Well, I think that we have as much power in that as they do at this point, with the amount of money and the amount of manipulation that we're doing there in order to keep the conflict going. At any point in the last year, we could have really set forward with the State Department to try to negotiate peace deals. There could have been summits. There could have been there could have been we had the G20 conference recently, but it wasn't the G20, it was like the G19, or I might be saying the G7 instead of G8 or something like that. And Russia has been pulled out of everything, which, yeah, I get that. Like, there's some legitimacy to that. Like, you don't reward the bad actor here. And I'm not saying either that Russia was justified in engaging. Like, there was definitely some provocation from NATO that helped lead to this situation, but we didn't press the button for them to, invade.
Right.
From there, sorry, say again.
I mean, couldn't they just, stop?
If they did, though, I mean, it's a little bit of sunk cost fallacy potentially, and there's a lot of different people that Putin is responding to within his government and within his corporate elite that run the country effectively in Russia. So it's not quite as simple as just being like, oh, sorry guys, never mind, because there's a lot of moving parts now in this regard within the government and within their economy that they have to respond to and that they have to answer to. And now they're in it. If they did relinquish, like, Putin will get cooed by somebody. If it's not us manipulating it and making it happen, it's going to be somebody within his government, within his military, within the corporate elite there. But along with that, we've been at war, or I say we because we're funding this thing now. I mean, Ukraine did not have drones. They did not have F-16s. They did not have the missiles systems that they have. And for sure, like, you want these people to be able to defend themselves, but where are the peace talks? Where are the peace accords? Like, where is?
I would have to research this, Brian, but I would, because prove it, because I'm not sure if I'm remembering it exactly correctly, but I do believe that there were quite a few back and forths.
We're at near 100 billion now.
Yeah,
putting into their military.
Yeah, but what's the other side of it is just to concede Ukraine?
No, of course not. It's to have peace talks. It's to have peace accords, to have a running conversation at the UN in Geneva, something for us to be able to come to some kind of conclusion. I mean, we've done this over and over again. We did it in Vietnam. We did it with Iran-Contra. We did it in Iraq. Like we've manipulated
This is not
things
Iraq.
and made it worse.
No. But I have to highly disagree. This is not. I mean, yes, we
We-
did. But this
We
is
did.
not-
No, we did do that in Iraq. We had an illegal war in Iraq, kind of twice, to be
No, no,
honest,
no.
because
No,
the
no.
instigating factor in 1990 also was made up.
No, I understand, but I'm sorry. I took what you said the opposite direction. I didn't understand what you said. So the thing is, though, I do believe, and maybe I'll share it with you, but Russia laid out the only way that they would have any talks, and that included things that are completely, I mean, from Ukraine's point of view, because
Right.
from their point of view, we're complete non-starters. So I mean, I don't know how you talk to somebody that's bombing you and committing genocide in your country and telling you that the only way they'll talk to you is if you concede your country to them. I mean, that's pretty difficult. So so I guess that, I mean, so I would hope, I mean, I don't know, I believe as you do, Brian, and then Ed, I would love to hear your point of view, because but my thing that I would offer is that I do believe that this is strategic on the United States part in order to weaken Russia. I believe that
It is
I believe
100%.
Yes, I believe that is a strategic objective. I believe that is happening. And
If we can come back from the Cuban Missile Crisis,
yeah,
then we can have talks, even if they're not out in public. Like we can figure this out.
yes,
But we are strategically deciding not to, and we are putting near 100 billion. I don't know what the number is now, but tens of billions into the war effort instead of the other direction. That's all I'm trying to say.
yeah, that makes I understand. I think I understand your point of view better. Ed, do you have any comment on it?
I just remember that prior to the invasion, there were diplomatic. There was a lot of talk of the diplomatic stuff. Our number whatever guy talking to their number what, like it felt very typical. But I also remember feeling like this is what Putin wants to do. And for you longtime fans of following who Putin is, what he does, what he's good at, he's a spook. I mean, he's a born and died, like he is a,
100%. Yeah.
He's a warmonger. He loves war. He loves conflict. He loves power. He's just another one of the world players right now. He's another supervillain who was mysterious money, not so mysterious anymore. Here's to me, it's the war we now have, and we always have one. There's always a big war going on somewhere. It's the one we're going on right now that all the new stuff is happening. All the new troll farms, all the new propaganda, all the new misinformation, all the new on the ground video of things happening right now. Like if you want to watch that war in real time and you want to piece it together between all the various feeds, you can. It's awful. It's terrible.
Well, that's a really good point, though, because you're right. You can, but you have to go look for it. Actually, it is not being well publicized.
The media is not now.
The media is asleep.
This is what I always remember learning in school was the media in World War II was all about bringing our boys home safe. That was win the war, get our boys home safe, right? No talk of corporate, no talk of blah, 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 no, blah, blah, blah. Bring it like local. Vietnam eventually became in this war. And they became instrumental in it because they were the ones showing the body bags. That was the whole thing about Vietnam. America was not prepared to be eating dinner and watching body bags coming in to the ports and the airports. And that's what helped end the war. So the media actually helped end that war. And since then, Now you don't have now you can't take pictures of of the coffins coming home. You can't take pictures of body bags. And now that we manipulate all the figures of like what an actual wartime casualty is, if you're shot in Iraq but you don't die till you get home in California, that's not counted as a war casualty. That's something like it's all been corporatized and
absolutely. You have Geraldo Rivera embedding with the Marines and having a good old time there on his CNN feed, showing the fun of it.
Right.
And
sorry. Go ahead, Ed.
I was just going to say, once again, we see how I know everybody has come to the conclusion at some point of how unserious some people are about politics. They're super involved and they're making things. It's sort of like what the Republicans are doing right now with the weaponization of, I don't even remember what the name of the thing was, the weaponization of government.
The debt ceiling.
No. There was a Jim Jordan
yes. Yeah.
thing. And it's like the weaponization of government. And then we're going to have another Hillary Clinton try. Like, they're not serious. It's not serious politics. It's play acting politics, merely because the level of people that they need to vote for them aren't serious people either. So what do they want? They want insurrections. They want guns. They want, they want slogans, and they want Jim Jordan to embarrass,
name it as crazy as possible and
just
shoot for the stars and land on the moon kind of thing.
That's why they have no policies. They have it's not politics anymore. It's just circus. Okay. Well, then a war breaks out. And that's what we're used to. So we're not going to have it's almost coming up on a year now, right? Like they invaded in.
It's over a year. It's
over a year, right?
I think it was in March, if I remember.
Like you said, Brian, it's like that's so last year, man. Like we can't. Americans are so spoiled and so. And my contention is it's not Americans' fault. Americans have been victimized by these corporate entities that have figured out how we think and how we act. Like our primal instinct.
We've been propagandized so well, and it goes back to especially stuff like COINTELPRO, arguably MK Ultra stuff. Like ever since the end of World War II, our governmental institutions have affiliated with the media entities that have propagandized us into this manufactured consent of being okay with just perpetual war, perpetual crisis, perpetual eroding of rights, Patriot Act, war after war that's not even a legal war. Like it's fine because
I go to every now and then on my day off, I'll go do something to really immerse myself. So today I went to BW3s, and that's a great place to go immerse yourself because what are you surrounded by? Leisure. You're surrounded by giant televisions showing nothing but leisure. People with time on their hands to throw balls and hit balls and play games, right? It's all sports. And the one thing that does break through on the 25 televisions, also you're eating like basically candied meat.
Candied meat, yeah.
And drinking sugar. That's what you do there.
Yeah, buddy.
And getting COVID.
America.
And the one thing that did break through that caught my eye was the ride-along shows, the cop shows that have normalized cops, right? Have normalized
brutalization.
We have normalized so much horror in this country that, and then so when the lockdown, like when everybody got numb, everybody was already numb when COVID came along. Like it's easy to forget how pummeled we have been since 2015, but it's easier to forget how pummeled we already were in 2015. I mean,
absolutely.
We're so moment to moment in this news cycle. It's not even a cycle. It's just a feed. It's just
It's a blink. It's a blink. We can't keep up.
endless. Yeah, it's the endless scroll. That it feels
Well-
hopeless, and the reason it feels hopeless
Yeah.
is because it's bottomless. So what you have to do is you have to decide what am I consuming that actually has anything to do with me?
Sure.
What can I actually affect of
That's what we're
any
talking
of
about.
this?
Yeah, that's what we were talking about today, Ed. We were saying,
Right. Because if you put your energy into all of it, you disappear.
You're done.
And that's not just true in 2023. That's true
always.
anytime, anywhere, right? The world's just too big, you know.
I went through a period of that in 2017 after the election, and I was truly in a bad spot for a little while, and
Yep.
I have to always temper myself to not get too down deep into it again, because it's you get lost for sure. Emotionally, you can't breathe because there's just too much going on always, and we're not designed for it. You know, we're little ants on this speck of dirt, and we're not supposed to really know more than our tribe. And,
right. Our immediate surroundings. We can't read minds. We can't see over the hill. We can only remember what we remember, and then we see what's right in front of us.
Can't keep up with a tribe of 8 billion.
Well, that's right. Unless you embrace those 8 billion as one thing, which you are,
Sure.
which we all are. But the fact that the I don't want to use the word weaponization, but some people read literature as cautionary tales of human folly. That's what it's for. That's the tool that the humans have invented, literature. Unfortunately, when you write that stuff, it's also a handbook. So 1984 is a handbook. The current reason why Christians hate talking animals is because talking animals leads you to Animal Farm, which is the clearest, most direct example of how it happens. And because it's using animals, it's as obvious as it can be. Well, how do you get Animal Farm out of the schools? Well, talking animals are evil. Well, look over here. Like,
Billy. Can I mention it? Just Billy.
Then you start getting worried about Satanists and Target.
Right. Well, but Billy just read. He just read Fahrenheit 454, and
451.
And we've been talking about that with
450.
451. Yeah.
451.
Pardon me.
Yeah.
Jesus. Could I?
No, Jeremy.
All right.
No, I want to read 454. Is that?
Yeah, 454. Well, but I mean, at least it was hot. At least things still burn at 454.
Things are hotter. Fahrenheit
I didn't go-
451 too. It's hotter.
That was the third sequel. Yeah. It didn't do as well.
I'm sorry, but he has been reading those things, and just the other day I went to an open house with to Ethan's school, and I looked around. I was super distracted and out of the moment because I was looking around in the classroom and realizing how much of the stuff that was in that classroom would be deemed illegal in some states right now in our country, and what's been happening, and it's, I don't know. To me, it's like you have to strike a balance. You guys have been talking about, how it can overwhelm you. Like, we have to strike a balance. I can't feel guilty. I cannot feel guilty about enjoying my car racing. I can't do it because it's a break. I can't. When we went out, I swear to God, racing go-karts saved my freaking mental health during the pandemic. It was the way I could still have community. It was still something I could, strive at and achieve at. It was still something I could focus my brain on, all of those types of things. And I don't blame anyone from going to the theater, going to see a movie, going to see a show, doing these things, while the world is doing what it's doing. Because, dear God, I don't need everybody eating a gun, right? So to be productive and to do the things that we can touch on ourselves, we have to recharge, we have to do something, right? It's some way to keep ourselves sane and then be able to help people in our actual range of effect, right? Does that make sense?
Sure.
So,
You got to choose. You got to choose a project, so to speak.
yeah,
Like,
you have
there's-
to choose something.
Like-
And just one thing I wanted to mention, I just feel like really quick, and I'm sorry to go back to it, but I wanted to mention about our discussion on war and current wars and past wars. I think you can be consistently against shitty invasions, and you can be against the United States shitty invasions and against Russia's shitty invasions and against whoever's doing it, right? I can consistently be against it because I was certainly against the wars in Iraq and certainly against those things, and to no avail. Marched, and I mean it seems pointless. I mean, when you look back at it, and that's depressing, but you look back at it, we were part of throngs, millions and millions of people were against the Iraq war, and what good did it do? I don't know. You know what I mean? Did it do any good? So it's a tough thing to think about.
well,
But
when we don't hold our leadership accountable,
Right.
it keeps happening.
yeah,
Whether
Yeah.
it's our corporate leadership or our political leadership,
Well, and at this point,
it's the same, right?
yeah, it's very similar.
so
So
fascism is.
what we can do, I think we should wrap up. The military, Dan Hull says, of course, yes, the military industrial complex, of course.
Right.
That's
Yep.
exactly right.
And you have-
got guns to sell.
Yeah, and you have to be careful with the propaganda associated is it's insidious because it takes what should be good thoughts and well intent and it turns into something that it's not. And
Yes.
where I go with that is, for example, Jeremy, what you were talking about being an indie on Memorial Day and having that audience become silent and respect and be thoughtful to the people that have lost their lives, and
Yeah.
that's powerful and that's important. But at the same time, the way that the military and the Pentagon has co-opted our sports and co-opted our economy in the way that they support our troops is on Bud Light cans and that kind of stuff. That's where it goes to into an insidious kind of measure, because we're not just respecting the dead. We're that's sad.
propagating.
That's sad, but rah rah rah, and
Yeah.
those are two very separate things that are conjoined in this culture, and that's super dangerous.
And
agree
it's a good example of kind of the issue. We're so often presented with these false binaries.
Sure.
It's either this or it's that. These two things are true. You have a veteran, someone who served in Vietnam, signed up, wasn't drafted, signed up, went, fought for their country, did what they thought was the right thing to do.
Sure.
That's one side. And on that side, it's this one thing. Then you have the Pentagon Papers, which
Yeah.
tells a whole different story. That's a whole different thing. And the
Right.
two don't really have that much to do with each other. And I think people get confused about that stuff. They see it's like spitting on a veteran. It's like, why would you ever? The misguidedness of that versus sort of like forgiving a general for carrying out illegal war. Like, how would you ever forgive a general for carrying out an illegal day after day after day after day, dollars and lives and all that? no forgiveness.
Yes, spit on the
Ever.
fucking general.
Right. but to make that distinction is tough for a lot of
It's
people.
difficult.
They see military and military. That's a real problem we have, where it's like we're so used to saying things like Congress or the left or the right or these people or those people, blah, blah, blah. And so I get that part of the chaos and the pace of chaos is the loss of nuance, and
And it allows for the banality of evil to come through.
that's the whole thing.
And it allows the normal bureaucracy to overtake it becomes rote. It becomes what should be horrific day in and day out is just part of going to work.
Right.
And, that's part of the media culture around you.
Wear you down, so you don't resist.
Yep.
And that's the militarization of police. That's a corporatization of everything. That's the over-consumer. I had today on my day off, I had the $1 million bacon. What's the $1 million bacon? Sugar bacon is basically what it is. It's basically candied bacon. I had candied meat twice today. And both times I was sitting there going, there is no justification for this. This is wrong 100%. There is no good in it at all. There is nothing.
You disgust me, Ed.
And yet there I am. I mean.
In fact, there you go.
Well, you should.
This is okay. So listen, we have to end it up. We have to wrap it up. So why not wrap it up with double birds and
double birds on the heart. Double birds on the heart.
Let's see your birds.
If I could shove you through the screen, I would. But hey, really, as always, just a fantastic conversation. I want to find a way that we can build this so we can, it's the politics side always ends up, and rightfully so. We've got so much negative stuff going on that needs attention. Maybe next time we can chat. I want to try one time where we get to get towards the end of this thing and we throw some good news stories out there, because there are some things happening.
Yes.
So maybe we'll set that as a goal for next week. But I did enjoy this conversation a lot. I enjoyed my somewhat of our, we had a little bit of a debate there, Brian, and I appreciate it. And I'm glad to have it with you.
Yeah, likewise, man.
Ed, thanks so much for your input here. Appreciate y'all. That's the end of week 9, 8.
I think we've gone long enough where we're at 9 now at this point.
I agree. All right, and we'll see you guys next week. And thanks everybody for listening. Thanks Dan. Thanks Vince. Thanks for everybody else who chatted in, who maybe was watching and didn't comment. But much love. Peace, y'all.
Much love.
Peace.
Peace.